Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, an Italy travel podcast. I'm Darcy Melton.
And I'm Nathaniel Malor.
And today we are starting a new series called Off the Beaten Path. And this is going to be a series that we do, I think, once a month, one week a month, essentially. And it's going to be everything from towns that you might not have heard of, or things inside of big cities that aren't the main attraction, little interesting things that you might not have heard of. We might do episodes on things like castles or gardens around Italy. So yeah, I'm excited for this new series.
This is hopefully it's something you pitched a while ago in our podcast meeting of the two of us. And no, it sounded like it'd be something interesting because we had a couple little things here and there that we've never been sure how to fit into an episode unless we talk about that specific town or that specific city. So we thought this might be an interesting way to kind of bring it up on itself. Like, how do you talk about a town that we really have nothing else to say apart from this one interesting thing that might be worth it if you're in the area, or one interesting region that has, or one region that has some interesting sites, rather than making a whole series about it. It could just be part of this off the beaten path. And if I may, one thought I had, or one addition, if I may, is that I think we've mentioned this before. A lot of these are not going to be things necessarily that are worth coming over solely to see. If you're not anywhere from Italy, basically. The idea is if you're already in Italy, this is something interesting to add on to your itinerary potentially. Or if you've already decided to plan a trip to Italy, this could be something you can go and see while you're in Rome, for example, or in the Tuscany region, for example. It's not something that you need to come over and see this one thing, like Venice, would be an example of something that you should probably just come see.
Right, exactly.
So that was, if I may, just to add that little addition.
Yeah, I agree. And before we get into our off the beaten path for today, as always, we want to thank everybody. I sound like a flight attendant. We want to thank everybody who has been following us, who's been leaving reviews. If you want to do that, if you enjoy this podcast, you can listen where you're listening now, and you can leave a review.
You can continue to listen.
And follow us wherever you're listening. I think for a lot of you that is Apple and Spotify. So yeah, if you enjoy us, please follow us and leave a review. If you have any questions, or if you want to find more information about the things we're talking about, you can go to onlyabag.com, where we have tons of articles about things in Italy, and like city-specific guides. We have a new section for your first time to Italy, sort of assisting you with planning your trip, just giving you ideas, things to jump off of. You can also contact us there. You can also
find jumping off points.
Yep, that's the one.
If I may.
Not things to jump off of. Is that what I said? Jumping off points. You can find us on Instagram at Only a Bag Podcast, and you can send us a message there, and I'll get back to you.
Perfect.
And if you want to help out the podcast, you can do so by using any of the affiliate links in our descriptions of these podcast episodes or on our website. You can also donate directly to us at ko-fi.com. That is ko-fi.com/onlyabag.
Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you, guys. And everyone. I'm trying not to say guys anymore. I use it as gender neutral, but,
Thank you,
y'all,
people.
Folks. I like folks.
Folks, yeah, that's your Southern charm. It works.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, I say y'all all the time.
It's that Southern charm.
So what are we talking about today, Nathaniel?
Great question. Are we talking about the Piramide stop in Rome?
Yes.
Fantastic. So this is, if you are, I guess going back to what I was saying earlier, this might not be your purpose for visiting Rome, but it is something that I do highly suggest you see when you're in Rome. It's a little bit like the sort of the keyhole up on the Aventine Hill, the Aventine keyhole, which I'm sure at this point everyone has seen on Instagram, where it's essentially you look through a keyhole of a door and you can see the Vatican. It is intentional. It was designed in that way. It is now a bit of an attraction, kind of excitingly, but it's kind of like those types of things off the beaten path, which, for a while I think that was off the beaten path, and now it's just very much part of the trip. My idea for this episode, the first episode, is the Piramide stop, a stop you might not go to, honestly, if you are not specific, if you don't have a reason to go there. It really isn't near a lot of other things you might see. It's on I believe the blue line is what I call it. I think that's the 2 line or the B line. I can't remember if they do numbers or letters in Rome, which is hilarious because
B.
B?
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
because
they just
C
started
is
the
the
C
new one.
line.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So this is a metro stop in Rome is what you're talking
This
about.
is a metro stop in Rome called Piramide, which is Italian, obviously, for pyramid. And you might be wondering why there is a pyramid there, because it kind of looks like what the English might call a folly, word I learned of recently, and I was very excited to use it, which is okay, now the English are listening like, okay, now tell us what it is without messing up. It is basically, I think it's easy to assume it's something that is a later reproduction of something that's actually old, meant to look old, because it looks startlingly out of place.
Yes, it does.
In Rome. I think that's fair to say.
It absolutely does.
It also abuts, using some SAT words here, it also abuts the non-Catholic cemetery. And actually, first, just wanted to start with this because we are going to do an episode, I think, on this cemetery, mostly for some of the intriguing people, I think, buried there, and the fact that Rome as a city kind of did have this little bit wider, I don't know, reach, I think. I don't know, the idea that this cemetery has so many famous people buried there, it kind of goes to show that, like, what Rome stood for so many people, even in, like, the 1800s. I say even in the 1800s, I just meant, like, not ancient Rome and not, like, today, but, like, over the various points of history. And it's fascinating, the cemetery itself. It's kind of not quite like the Torre Argentina, which is a cat sanctuary. I think it's an approved cat sanctuary. This one's more of a low-key cat sanctuary, if you will. This is just has a bunch of cats.
If I were a cat, I would hang out in a cemetery.
Yeah. I think for a while it was not frequently visited. It wasn't kept up. I mean, for like hundreds of years, it wasn't kept up. And it was only I think approved in the 16 or 1700s as an actual cemetery. Before, if you were not Catholic and then you died in Rome, you were either sent back or you were just sort of tossed in a hole, and they hope for the best. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think as basically wealthy Protestant, specifically English, dying is what started the cemetery, because English were not Catholic. They were, I guess, Church of England or Protestant or something else. And so when they died there, sort of like a dignitary or something, rather than shipping a body back to England, which could take a long time and kind of start decomposing, they would bury it in Rome, the body, and then essentially needed a different cemetery than a Catholic one. Again, we'll go into depth. But I thought it was fascinating because it is buried at the cemetery, which is kind of a nice little addition. I guess if you're in the area anyway, there's a used market there. There's this beautiful cemetery if you just want to relax, walk through under the cypress, not under the holly, next to the holly. The holly doesn't grow that big there, but there are some holly bushes, small trees. I don't know what we call those, saplings, I think. So there are some holly plants there. And it's right now, not right now, but for the last 100 and something years, it's famous for also being the burial place of Percy B. Shelley, or Bichet. I don't actually know.
His middle name is Biche.
Biche?
Biche.
Really? Sounds like
Percy?
a French soup.
Biche.
Like a
Shelley.
roux and a biche.
Yeah, or bisque.
That's what it is. So I knew there's a real one I was thinking
Percy
of.
Bisque Shelley.
So Percy Bysshe Shelley, and also Keats. And I thought it was kind of interesting because a lot of the Romantic poets have attachment both to Rome, interestingly, but also to this cemetery. So if you are there, if you were having a lovely day out and you happen to be at the cemetery and you're like, this is a lovely time, and you notice this pyramid and you think, what is this brand spanking new pyramid doing in the middle of Rome? You might be surprised to find out that it is not a brand spanking new pyramid. It's an old spanking new. What? No, it's an old pyramid.
Yes.
It's just old.
It's just old.
How do we don't have a old pyramid?
Yeah.
I guess we don't have like the opposite of brand spanking new.
Yeller.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. That's the only thing that came to mind.
Okay. So it's an old pyramid, fascinatingly enough. And yeah, I don't know. I think that for me, that was the first thing that was that fascinating. I had just assumed it was new.
It is fascinating that it's old, because when you look at it, like we've said before, it really looks quite new. It looks like a reproduction thing that they just stuck in the ground for interest.
Yeah. Or like, I think it almost kind of can look like something during, if you've been to Rome near it's kind of like the old Olympic Village. I believe it's up near the current stadium for the Roman team, as well as Italy plays there when they play in Rome, and the Rome's club team plays there.
Soccer?
For soccer, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, for soccer. It also has where the paddle tournaments take place, as well as not the tennis tournaments, because those are actually in the Piazza del Popolo. But there's a few other tournaments, swimming, usually there's swimming competitions up there. And I only say it's this area that has a giant obelisk to Mussolini. and it has Il Duce at the Duke at the bottom, and it has, I think, Mussolini going up, or Il Duce Mussolini going up, something like that. So it's easy to think, I think, that during this fascist era, Rome was sort of enamored by Egyptian things, and then must have also built this pyramid. In fact, it was not built during Mussolini's time, though they did steal a pyramid, an obelisk from Ethiopia, and then returned it in 2005. I thought that was fascinating. This was built in 12 BCE, so I guess 12 years before zero, if that helps. So it's called the Cestius Pyramid. It's named after a fellow named Cestius. He has a much longer name. It's a Roman name, but for ease in this podcast, I was just going to call him Cestius, as that is what he's referred to. And so it's in essence, it's his burial chamber. It was one of the fascinating things is that they're not entirely sure inspired by which pyramids it was, because if you've seen the pyramids of Giza, they're much more a softer slope, if you will. This is a much more steep slope. So it's either done in the style of the Nubian pyramids, specifically from the kingdom of Meroe, which I'm possibly and almost certainly mispronouncing, which would be in modern day Sudan, or some, because around basically the time period, this was built in 12 BCE. The Romans had a sort of invasion of Meroe in 23 BCE, so about 11 years prior to this being built. So a lot of people thought that he must have served in this campaign, and then when he got back, he built himself a burial chamber.
So the Romans went to
Meroe.
Meroe. So the Romans went there and then came back with ideas of how to.
They came back with a lot of. Apparently, they came back with a massive. Even before that, because just before that, in 30 BCE, so 7 years prior to the invasion, the conquest, the fight, the war in Meroe, they were in Egypt, and same thing. And that was again this idea that it might be the pyramids actually inspired by Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, which also used steep-sided pyramids, not the more softer sloped pyramids of Giza. The only reason I find that fascinating is that for both these conquests of the sort of Ptolemaic region of now Egypt, and also Nubia, Meroe and Nubia, inspired essentially like this fad of Egyptian things across Rome. Basically, as a lot of people got into sort of the Egyptian fad, sort of like much later, I think with England in Egypt, it revitalized again.
People go and conquer, and they're like, they have great style. Let's bring it back.
100%.
Okay.
And it's kind of it's also fascinating to me that, I don't know, maybe it's also with other cultures, but it really seems like all of Europe has at some point been obsessed with Egyptian, specifically Egyptian, history. Not necessarily anywhere else, but just really like the pyramids, really like the sphinxes, really like the obelisks, really like the hieroglyphics, or the scarabs, and so that gets added into something that somebody does. I mean, same thing. The United States dollar has a pyramid on the back. So I think we've all been at some point, whether it's the Greeks, whether we've been inspired by the Greeks and their columns and their buildings and their pantheon of gods, or the Egyptians. It's just interesting to know that that was not even, I don't think, the first time. That was just
absolutely
one of many. So in either case, it is a very steep-sided pyramid. And one of the ways we know it was kind of not necessarily, it's made of Carrara marble, which is one of the reasons we know it's not from, obviously, Egypt. It wasn't like taken over block by block, but in fact built in Italy. And the inside has a barrel-vaulted sort of ceiling. It has some frescoes. It has all these classic Roman touches, which is also how they know that it was a Roman person. There's also an inscription outside, by the way. So that was the first hint, but just also there were many clues along the way. But they're like, we know this is Roman because of the frescoes, and everyone's like, there's a name above the door, and they're like, that wasn't a hint. That doesn't count. So one of the reasons I wanted to kind of add into one of the reasons it's so well preserved, because it's not the only pyramid in Rome, at least it wasn't. And one of the reasons it's so well preserved is in the mid 200s or so, it was incorporated into the Aurelian walls, which is the walls basically around, at that time, around Rome, the city of Rome. And so it was kind of used as a barracks, or part of a fortress, a lookout point. It was used as different things, but in essence, it was kind of maintained because it needed to be, rather than being torn down. They thought, no one's going to invade that. There's no doors. It's already perfect. Just leave it as it is. Now, if I may take a quick aside to talk about this other pyramid. In the old days, 1600s, this pyramid of Cestius, which was originally called Cestius, and everybody knew it was called Cestius, it kind of lost its name, basically, mostly through shrubbery, I think, which overgrew the pyramid after being used as the railing walls. It just sort of got, kind of wild over there, basically. I mean, even the we talked about the cemetery. It is now has cypress trees and has holly, but originally it wasn't. It was cattle would graze in this area that was the cemetery, and they made the cemetery, so it was just a wild area, basically. But the reason I mention that is because there was a point for a while, for a few hundred years, but it sort of terminated in the 1600s, where they called this the Pyramid of Remus, as in one of the two founders of Rome, the other being the Pyramid of Romulus, which is located sort of, no, not anymore, but it was located sort of southeast of the Vatican City. Now, that for me was fascinating, mainly because this second pyramid was also a burial tomb. It was also sort of, people loved it. People thought it was the two twins. Of course, when Rome became Christian, it was no longer the pyramid of Romulus and Remus, but the pyramids of Peter and Paul. So it was sort of,
Wow.
it kind of like, they were like, we really like this whole two pyramid system. Mm-hmm. Pope Alexander VI in the 1600s, he sort of there was the whole thing in the 1600s, by the way, and I was considering talking about this, but I figured I'd throw it in more as information now, that a lot of the obelisks, because Rome, interestingly, if I may add yet another brief aside, is the city, basically has the most ancient ancient obelisks in the world of any city. It is the city with the most ancient obelisks in the world. Yes. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Apparently more so than like Cairo or other Egyptian cities.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah, they basically, and they were almost all stolen. And then, of course, some were made by the ancient Romans themselves in the style of the Egyptians, but pretty much all of them stolen and used to line the Circus Maximus, that little racetrack. Mm-hmm. At some point, they sort of fell like into out of fashion, because in the 1600s, they discovered a lot of these obelisks, like found them somewhere. I don't know if they were under the stairwell or something, and
some of them were just in like random gardens and stuff, right?
There was, I don't know. I mean, is that something?
Well, the one with the elephant was in a garden.
Okay, that is good to know.
I assumed others were.
Some of them I think are too big to be in a garden.
Fair, yes, they are.
They
absolutely
are a few
massive.
100 feet high. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more, because I know the one in front of the Vatican, interestingly, is, I believe, the only one in Rome that has no hieroglyphics on it, and nobody's sure if it never had hieroglyphics in the first place, or if they were removed because it's now a Christian site, not a Egyptian site. But they're not really sure why. It's also the only one to have not fallen. All of the other ones have fallen, and some of them have lost significant height because they have fallen, which I thought was interesting. Because they fall and they crack, and then they put them back up, and then they reshape the top to be
right.
If they can't obviously put it back together. So I apologize. That was the brief aside about obelisks. Going back to the pyramid, which is the original brief aside, I feel like I'm bringing y'all on a fun little journey, and I hope it is fun for everybody. So there was this, under Pope Alexander VI, there was a bit of a rediscovery, and people were finding stuff and being like, this is crazy, how awesome. And near this pyramid, there's also kind of a burial tomb. There's all sorts of stuff happening, and he was kind of under this public works project to sort of scrap the lot of it, basically. And they didn't really know much about this pyramid specifically, this Pyramid of Romulus, because there wasn't really a name inscribed, or maybe there was and they just ignored it. They were kind of like, it's cool, it's nice, but it's not fitting the vibe of the Vatican anymore. Okay. So they took it away. And part of it, he wanted to build a new road. He feels like they weren't connected to Rome as easily as they could have been. And he's like, we want one nice, straight, beautiful new road that goes from my front door to Rome's front door, which I believe is still there. It was called Borgo Nuovo. It's still kind of called Borgo Nuovo, but it's the road that you can kind of just take a straight shot from the Vatican, kind of straight to the Tiber, basically. The Castel Sant'Angelo is kind of now where the road not ends, but goes to. And that was the whole point. It was essentially a road from the Vatican to the Tiber, which would have been to Rome. Interestingly, though, the pyramid was not unused. He did reuse those also Carrara marble blocks that was used to make the Pyramid of Romulus, and to basically build the staircase of St. Peter's Basilica. So the giant stairs that you now walk up to go into St. Peter's Basilica was once a pyramid. I am, of course...
That's insane.
Right? And I'm fascinated to know if underneath any of the stairs are inscriptions or anything. Like, if they basically, this has words on it, just flip it over and use the other side.
Ooh, interesting.
And just because it's fascinating to me, he understood that taking a pyramid down, it was a pain and nobody wanted to do it, even for money, because they were like, nothing's worth that much money. Like, this is just a pain. We all hate this. So he offered indulgences, which I did not know what indulgence was, a plenary indulgence, which apparently is essentially, we'll forgive your sins, a little get out of sin free card.
Wow.
Which apparently was a big, I realized one of the reasons I was familiar with that because I read Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth, and they talked about building churches in France. And again, nobody really wanted to do it because it sucks enormously, and it's muddy all the time, and it's raining, and it's wet, and it's awful. So they were offering these like get out of sin free cards, and people originally would show up and be like, yeah, that sounds awesome, but like apparently 20 and 30 years on, they'd be like, no, I'm good. Honestly, I still have a few more years of sinning to do to make up for the fact I can unsin, so we're good. So I thought that was fascinating.
Wow.
And the other, of course, thing that was, for me at least, fascinating is that he then blocked up the other roads leading to the Vatican, forcing people to use his new road, which sounds, interesting.
The arrogance of that city planner.
Yeah, right? Well,
he's the city
Pope,
planner.
but,
yeah.
I love it.
And city planner.
Pope and also city planner. We're not a city planner. Maybe somebody told him this is a bad idea, and he's like, no, this is a great idea. I want a very long road in front of my front door.
Wow.
So anyway, going back to this original pyramid of Cestius that you can still see because it's still there in the Pyramide Stop. It was actually under Pope Alexander VI successor, Pope, I assume, because it was right afterwards, and also his name is Alexander VII. And I know that how popes get to choose their own names, but given the fact this was right afterwards, it made me think that Pope VI was popular enough that Pope VII chose the same name. I don't know. Point is, he sent an excavation team to clear out this pyramid because he was curious. He was like, well, it's got to be something, right? The first thing they did was cut all the shrubbery and the trees around it. As you can tell today, it's now a very, very treeless, shrubberyless area.
It's landscaped, so you can see it.
It's also a road going around it, which is kind of interesting. It's a little funky.
It really does. It just kind of pops up out of nowhere because of the way that Rome is growing around it.
And the road is both raised and wrapped around it. And it's kind of like, it's just a weird, it's an interesting way to have preserved the pyramid by putting the road right next to it. Mm-hmm. But they cleared the shrubbery and the vines. They found an inscription on the face of the pyramid, which is how they knew it was not the pyramid of Remus, but in fact the pyramid to Cestius, which I'm sure a lot of people were bummed about. They found a door to the inside. That's when they realized that, oh, I get it. This is Roman, not like Roman, but not Remus Roman, just not also Egyptian Roman. And then they found these two bronze bases for statues outside. And apparently that's significant. Mm. I wrote that down because I personally thought that was fascinating. They didn't find the statues; those had been looted. And the interior of this this mausoleum had also been looted. Unclear if they stole the body or if they just stole the stuff that was in there.
Okay.
So but they did steal the statues and they did loot the interior. They left the frescoes, thankfully. And finally, I thought it was fascinating that it's part of the Grand Tour in the 18th and 19th centuries. Not really today anymore, but during the 18th and 19th centuries, it was part of the Grand Tour. A lot of architects came to see this specifically, which I thought was kind of fascinating because it's almost, I don't know, it's interesting to go somewhere and see a reproduction of something.
Yeah.
Or not quite a reproduction, but like it's not an actual pyramid in the same way that a lot of the obelisks are actual Egyptian obelisks. It is a reproduction of a Nubian or Ptolemaic pyramid. I'm confusing my words at this point. I apologize. So it's interesting that they reproduced it, and then that inspired these architects during the Grand Tour to take this pyramid shape and then start creating pyramids like in the West, basically. And I did look for, they sourced a book, and I couldn't find a PDF version of that book to find which pyramids specifically were inspired by this one in Rome, because I thought that was fascinating. There are a lot of pyramids in a lot of the world, and I was specifically it references the West, and I'm like, there's still a lot of pyramid-like shapes. I mean, the Louvre's glass pyramid is one, which is, apparently ugly or beautiful depending on how you look at it, and
pretty modern as well, right?
Yeah, I think so, but. Okay. Still could be. Yes, it is. But I meant like it's still people. It still could have been inspired by this, but it's also it is a much more. It's not as steep as the sides of the one in Cestius, the Cestius pyramid. So it feels a little bit more maybe Giza inspired. But I was curious to know which ones were inspired. Unfortunately, I could not find a list or even just like a hint as to which ones were. But if you are curious about visiting, if you're like, you know what, that kind of sounds fascinating. I do like pyramids. I like barrel vaulted ceilings, and I like cats. Then you are in luck because it is open the second and fourth Saturdays of every month.
Oh, the pyramid itself is?
Yes.
Oh,
So you
wow.
can go inside. You can take photos outside, take photos inside. There are tours. You do have to kind of book in advance because they kind of have to know how many people are coming. But it's totally open to the public. And that's only recently. I think it wasn't for the longest time. And I think in 2015, it was when the preservation, I believe, ended I mean, in the sense of they were able to preserve some of the frescoes and this and that because it just, for the longest time, it was open and then nobody really did anything. And then they kind of gated it and made it so you couldn't get in. And I think in the late 90s, they started a preservation effort because they wanted to preserve this really interesting part of Roman history.
Wow. And I know it's free to enter the cemetery. Is it free to go into the pyramid?
I don't know, but I can put a link in the description.
Okay, cool.
That way, if you all are curious, if you are over there, it is kind of worth, I think, the extra stop.
Yeah, super cool.
So I believe that is all that is all I had for the Pyramid of Cestius, as well as I want to do an episode later on the Catholic or the non-Catholic cemetery, mostly because I thought it was fascinating how so many things revolved around this, if that makes sense, like how many people sort of where it was influenced. And I thought that was a bit fascinating. But again, it's off the beaten path in the sense that you might be in Rome and not go there. But if you happen to like have 4 days in Rome and you already know what you're doing with 3 of them, this could be an interesting use of a 4th day, or at least part of a 4th day.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who like to visit cemeteries. They tend to be beautiful and peaceful. I'm one of those people. So if you like that sort of thing, it's definitely a place to add to your list if you'd like to see it.
Yes, definitely. And like I said, you might only be over there if you are... There's the Mercato di Testaccio over there, which is a kind of a food and also like prepared food and like random goods market.
It's really cute.
Nearby, there's the Catholic cemetery, non-Catholic cemetery. Catholic cemetery would not narrow it down at all in the area. There's also Roma Ostiense near there, which is a train station that you probably won't use unless you're going out to Ostia or Ostia Antica, which are like Ostia is the sort of beachfront of Rome, and Ostia Antica is the sort of historic port. It's the ancient Roman port. So there's not much in the way of that. Basically, there's not a lot of reasons you'd find yourself over there. But again, it's one of those, I say the 4th day thing, because if like your first day's Colosseum, second day's Vatican, third day's walking around the Centro Storico, the historic district, the 4th day would be, you know what, let's go to the market, let's go to this thing, let's go check out, let's do all the weird things that are all kind of grouped in that area, and then you can take a train out to the beach, basically.
Absolutely.
If you want a little walk, or if you just want to Ostia Antica. Yeah.
And the keyhole that you mentioned at the top of the episode, just as an example of something that's been added to a lot of people's itineraries, is that near the Mercato Testaccio?
It's only about a 10-minute walk from both the pyramid and the Mercato di Testaccio. Mercato di Testaccio may be a little closer. It's not bad. We've actually mentioned that before because right next to it is the Garden of Oranges. And it's a lovely place to sit and have lunch. And if you are bringing, like, if you do get food from Mercato di Testaccio and you're okay with it being...
picnic lunch.
Yeah, if you're okay with it being lukewarm, then it's really nice to kind of take it up to the top of the hill. You will sweat like crazy getting up to the top of the hill, but it's a really beautiful view, and you can sit under the orange trees, and it really is genuinely quite nice up there. It's much more quiet than the rest of the city. But if you are looking for a little bit off the beaten path and just something a bit quieter and potentially less... I guess, I don't know, not just less populated, but just a little less energetic, a little less frenetic.
It's peaceful.
It's peaceful, especially in the middle of summer. Every time we've been there in the middle of summer, just, height of summer, tons of people in Rome, but almost nobody up there. So it feels really like private.
Yeah.
And that is everything. That was everything I had about the pyramid and part of the cemetery.
Cool.
And I hope you guys enjoyed listening. I am going to be working on kind of a script or something, at least for my portion of these, because I want to figure out a way to I realize when we talk about just general Italian things, I don't need a script because I'm like, oh yeah, I know. And I realize when it's something that I've seen something like 100 times, and then I'm like, okay, I should do some research into what this actually is, because
it's
I'm
hard to mix in
fascinated.
here's what I've seen mixed with history, mixed with storytelling, and communicating things in a way that's makes sense.
Without a script.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, not scripted, but like just to have a sort of like, and then other thing, because I realized I do, and a tangent from that tangent, which I realized in an actual conversation is, I think, one thing, but when you're listening and you might zone out for half a second, then you're like, wait, What is he talking about this time? What did I miss? So I hope that this was not too confusing for y'all to follow.
And I mean, I thought it was great.
Thank you.
And next episode, we're going to be talking about one more off the beaten path in Rome, as well as a couple off the beaten path places in Torino.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Talk to you next time. Tanti abbracci.